When I was a child, there was nothing to eat. I was the eldest of 5, and so it was my job to make sure that I always let my brothers and sisters eat before me. War was inching inward from the coast, and as it marched closer, our food grew scarcer. Animals fled the area, or were slaughtered and consumed in panic by the other families in our village. My father was a wise and cautious man, and so we waited to slaughter our 2 chickens until the fall, when grass and tree bark had become too hard to find or inedible. The other families knew we had chickens, and father stayed up all night, every night, to watch over them. He had to kill at least one boy from a neighboring town who had gone mad with hunger and tried to burn down our small home with a burning branch. When the chickens were not but bones, and the bones had grown brittle and porous from mother's many soups, my parents sent my 2 eldest siblings and I to collect bugs and field mice for supper. We were hungry, but not quite starving until one morning we woke to the first frost and there was nothing alive left to eat. My parents began to discuss the inevitable. Perhaps my father should go to the coast and sell his father's pocket watch to one of the drunken but well-paid soldiers. It was the only thing we had of value, and the only family heirloom my father had to pass down to me. I didn't want him to go. I was afraid war would arrive while he was gone, and I was too young and too weak to protect my mother and younger siblings. I begged him to stay, but he insisted it would be all right and promised to be back within 2 weeks. I was so afraid, and when he and mother were outside preparing his satchel, I smashed the pocket watch under my foot and placed it back in my father's half-rotted desk. My mother cried for days. Father did his best to comfort her as I watched them peel the leather from my father's boots and boil the hide for dinner. The next night, mother found a dead rat and boiled away the disease with the new fallen snow from outside. In the evening after that, she filled our bellies with rat bones and more melted snow. My little brother, Albert, kept everyone awake that night, crying over his hunger. He begged for all the things we'd eaten when we had a garden and animals: beef stew, white rolls, succulent corn, and spiced lamb. He made all of our stomachs moan and torture us, and I soon screamed at him to be quiet while mother sobbed from her room. Father stroked Albert's hair for hours, and then went back into his and mother's bedroom, shutting the door behind him. Albert moaned until the thin light of dawn peeked through our threadbare curtains. I could hear father in his room, tinkering with the watch. My hunger had long worn out my fear of soldiers, and I silently prayed that he could repair it. Father worked on the pocket watch all through the day and into the night. Celia had found dead crickets in the walls of the abandoned bakery, and as we ate them, father emerged from his bedroom with mother right behind him. The smile on his face was one I had almost forgotten, as I had not seen it since the day my youngest sister was born. He told us that he had repaired grandfather's watch and that he'd heard a soldier encampment nearby. 3 days, he promised us. 3 days and I will return with carrots and lamb and rolls so big they'll fill your bellies for a year. We clapped our hands in delight and ran around our small dirt yard with a delight and glee that seemed a foreign language to us. Father said that we were all to help mother find beautiful things with which to dress the table. The next morning he gave us all a piece of rubber from the sole of mother's shoes to chew on and sent us out on a mission after kissing us goodbye and promising to be back before we'd remember he had left. We had such fun that day, gathering horseshoes and shards of broken glass. We threaded bits of twine through the horseshoes to hang above the table and tied the glass to the ends, hoping they would shimmer in the lamplight. We returned home as the sun set, happy with our day's work and eager to return to it tomorrow. We weren't yet in sight of home when I first smelled it. Onions, chicken broth, spiced lamb, even sweets. I ran as fast as I could, dropping our table dressings carelessly along the way in my maddening pursuit for food. I burst through the door to find Mother at the stove, preparing our meal in a quiet reverence. I threw my arms around her and asked if Father was home already. "Yes, my love. He had chanced to meet a wealthy mercenary on the road who was only too happy to buy your grandfather's watch." I hugged her even tighter and sat down at the table as my brothers and sisters came spilling through the doorway. They found their places quickly, hungry, expectant looks upon their faces. Father came out of the bedroom and took his seat at the end of the table as Mother brought over a steaming platter of spiced, boiled lamb. She nodded at us, and we filled our hands with the rich meat, hardly bothering with our plates. After dinner, we were sent to bed with full tummies, barely a word having been said by anyone since our dinner had been set to table. We ate our fill the next night, and then the next, and the next. But as our food stock started to dwindle, so did Mother's health. Each day bled more out of her until we were left fighting over scraps of raw meat while our mother lay weak and wilting nearby. The first night I went again without food was the night that the hazy, happy ether began to lift and my memories of the past few days became confusing. I recalled that the spiced lamb I consumed with such ferocity had actually been sickly sweet, and the accompaniments I had first smelled from afar had never been brought to the table. I couldn't remember Mother eating anything in all the days since Father had returned. Instead, she'd sat quietly next to us at the table, staring at the pile of gray meat we consumed with such fervor. And Father, I couldn't recall hearing his voice since the morning he had left for the soldier encampment. His chair had sat empty night after night, and as the peripherals of my memory formed shape, I couldn't be entirely sure he had ever been there at all. At least, not since the morning he had cut pieces of rubber from Mother's shoes at the table. Frightened and starved, I didn't find sleep until the darkest hours of the night. The following morning, when Mother emerged from her room, I asked where Father had gone. She told me he'd left to become a soldier and sent us out to peel bark off the bushes in the forest. Father never returned. Perhaps the reason I didn't realize what happened back then was because it was too awful to consider, and I was so very hungry. But Mother died a few days ago, and in death she thrust the truth upon me. From her stock of meager possessions, I was bequeathed a small box that contained nothing more than a shiny, broken pocket watch. Perhaps she wanted me to remember it all, the only hope of our survival that I'd smashed under my heel. My father's last loving hug before he sent us to collect dressings for the feast, the overly seasoned gray meat, and the rancid smell that had began wafting out from under my mother's door, becoming more pungent each day. My father sacrificed more for his family than most ever would. I used to lament that I had nothing to remember him by, no family heirloom to pass down to my own children. But now I have his pocket watch, a thing I cannot give to my children. Not because the glass is shattered, not because the gears are cracked. I cannot part with the watch because it is a curse that I must bear, for the shiny, contorted metal has never lost the sickening smell of that sweet, silvery meat. I'm from a small town. I mean, small. Nothing much happened other than take your tractor to work day. I was a high school senior in a class of 42 people. We had all known each other since diapers. I could give you the first middle, and last name of every kid in my class. The biggest thing to happen to our town was the day we got the Starbucks. The only reason we got one was that we were right off the highway, and people passing through would make up for our small population size. Needless to say, we were thrilled. It was a small cafe with nothing much of an inside, but at least it had a drive-thru. The building itself is stacked right next to a strip mall, so it had a tiny parking lot. The actual drive-thru was pinned against a brick wall. Once you were in line, you had no choice but to keep going. This was especially annoying when the people in front of you had long orders. The line could fit about 6 cars back to back, and it was always full. Let me just say, the Starbucks didn't last long. 8 months after it opened, it was shut down. I got to see the reason why firsthand. It was spring break. My mom and I were heading to the mall, which was almost an hour away. It was hot. I was the one who suggested we stop at the Starbucks before heading out. My mom didn't want to. She said it was a waste of money. But I nagged her until she agreed. We pulled up to the drive-thru and there were 4 cars ahead of us. My mom sighed but got in line. 3 more cars pulled in back of us. We were all stuck like peas in a pod, sweating with the heat of the day. "I want something cold," I whined to my mom. She rolled her eyes.
"Strawberries and cream?"
"Yes, please." I put on my phone and Snapchatted some friends. "Getting fraps with the mom," I typed as I snapped a pic of us. My mom laughed and pushed the phone away. Suddenly, a loud pop filled the air. We looked at each other in surprise. It sounded like a gunshot, I said softly.
"No way."
She responded, shrugging it off.
"It was probably just a car backfiring."
We sat in silence for the next few moments. I think we both sensed something change. Then the scream came. It was a man's. Instinctively, I stuck my head out of the window to see what was going on. Because of how packed in we were against the buildings, we couldn't actually open our doors. But I was small enough that I could get half my body out of the window to view the scene. There was a figure standing on the hood of a car. It was about 4 cars ahead of us. He wore a gorilla mask, and his hand was a gun. He had it pointed down towards the windshield. Someone inside the car was screaming, begging for help. My mother pulled me in the car right before enough pop filled the silence. The windshield shattered and it lit up the alley in fear.
"We need to get out of here,"
my mom said under her breath. She looked around wildly, knowing that we were blocked in. The cars behind us weren't moving, and obviously neither were the cars in front. None of us could open our doors. "What the fuck?" I whimpered.
"It's going to be okay."
My mom put the car in reverse and slammed on the gas. Because we weren't moving, we couldn't get enough speed. She struck the car behind her, which faltered but didn't move. My mom's panic was getting worse. She tried going forward, but the same thing happened. We could see the people in the other cars panicking as well. The woman in front of us was banging her door against the brick of the building, trying desperately to climb through. She managed to edge halfway out, but got stuck. The man in the mask calmly climbed over the car he had just shot into and moved on to the next one. I watched in horror as he tapped on their windshield. There was a couple in the front seat. I could see them holding each other in dismay.
"Roll down your window,"
the masked man said loudly. The seconds ticked by. People in the cars around us were screaming. My mom and I were quiet.
"Roll it down, now!"
The driver's side window slowly rolled down. We could hear a man's voice from inside. "Please, we have kids in the car. Don't hurt us. We're good people. Please." The masked man leaned over towards the open window and shot the couple 2 times. Blood erupted from the car. Their windows were painted red. Now we could hear the cries of the children. My mom grabbed my hand. She swallowed slowly.
"Get down,"
she said. "What?" I couldn't comprehend what was happening.
"Get down as far under the seat as possible. He may not see you."
"But, Mom..." My words were interrupted by a chorus of gunshots. The kids' cries ceased. Without another word, I folded myself into the space under the dashboard. I got as small as possible. My mom angled her purse next to me, nearly covering the spot I was in. She was breathing hard. A woman's voice was piercing the alleyway.
Why? Why are you doing this?
I realized it must be the woman trying to get out of her car door. She got stuck between her car and the wall. I shut my eyes, trying not to picture her hanging there, just waiting to be shot down. Even my mom looked away as the shot rang out. Blood sprayed. My mom braced herself against the steering wheel. She looked ahead as if entranced. I sobbed quietly. I could feel the man jump onto our car hood. His footsteps were loud right above us. I glanced towards my mother. She didn't dare look at me. The gorilla mask hung down over the open window of my mom's side. The gun was pointed at her temple. I couldn't see his real face, but I got the feeling he was smiling. My mom suddenly reached out and grabbed the gun. I nearly knocked my head against the dashboard in surprise. The man must have been surprised too because the gun came easily out of his grip. She aimed upward and pulled the trigger. She shot him as many times as she could before the bullets ran out. Blood was dripping down the windshield and all over her clothes. The mask was covered in holes. She kept pulling the trigger even though nothing came out. I breathed a huge sigh. I couldn't believe she just did that. My mom, a small-town housewife, just killed a murderer. But before I could crawl out, another pop sounded. It came from my side of the car. I watched in horror as my mother's head exploded out of the back of her skull. She fell forward onto the steering wheel, her nose on the horn. I slowly turned my head to my side of the car, where someone wearing a Barbie mask was peering down. She cocked her head to the side, surveying her work. She must not have seen me because she disappeared. I felt her step off of our car and onto someone else's. I tried to breathe, but nothing came out. I stayed under my seat for nearly an hour. The police arrived within 20 minutes of the first shot, but I couldn't get myself to move. They only found me after using the jaws of life to open up the top of our car to pull my mom out. When the officer saw me, her face crumpled. She could see the fear still etched onto my face. I was the only survivor from the drive-thru. Altogether, 13 people were shot to death, including 3 kids under the age of 10. The man in the gorilla mask was later identified as a radical eco-terrorist. They planned this event to protest Starbucks' impact on the environment. Despite their intent, no one who worked at Starbucks was injured. It was just those of us in line. They never found the other person. My mom died bravely, and I still cling to that. Never in my life would have I expected her to grab a gun from a crazed killer. She did it for me. To save me. There is one thing that still eats me up inside, because despite their horrible actions, all of the death and destruction those murderers caused, the event actually worked. At least for me. I know I will never go to a Starbucks again. Before I start, you have to know I'm not crazy. I'm telling you all this for a reason. I need someone to know. I didn't want it to end the way it did, I promise. But, you see, I had no choice. I had to make it stop. Have to make it stop. It's been so long I can't even remember when the noise started. I was happy once. Normal. I had a life, a job, friends, family. There are only memories now. The noise won't allow me to be normal. Won't allow me to live. Believe me, I've tried. Piece by piece. It took everything from me. I have nothing. No one. The noise creeps into my thoughts, my life, my dreams, tearing, scratching, clawing its way through the remaining shreds of my sanity. It eats away at my mind, dominating every breath. It won't stop. It comes from the shadows, from the light, and everywhere, echoing through the empty recesses of this house, smashing off the walls and grinding its way into my head. I've tried to hide, to run. Nothing works. The constant screeching won't end, like nails on a chalkboard, a dentist's drill, the sound of a metal fork scraping at a plate, constant, every moment of every day. I grate my teeth, dig my hands into the sides of my head, scream. Nothing. The sound keeps coming. I hadn't moved, hadn't eaten, slept, showered. Had it been days? Weeks? Years? My sense of time was lost a long time ago. It went with the silence. My every thought, every action, every breath dominated by hellish noise. I stayed in bed, hid under the covers, tried to sleep. No luck. The pulsing, horrible sound wouldn't go away. I couldn't bring myself to leave my bed, to leave the room, go to work, to the store. I must be the only one, I thought. I would lie in my bed, watching the others outside my window, going about their lives, work, eat, sleep, rinse and repeat. They don't know my curse. They don't give a shit about me. The screeching continued, day and night, night and day. They blend together, it's all the same. Pain. I lost control of my life a long time ago. Watching the happy-go-lucky assholes outside, I knew they didn't care about me. Didn't care about my sanity. Just another crazy fuck lost in his own thoughts. Uncontrollable. Something to be ignored. Nothing to worry about. The people keep shuffling by, to and from work. I envy them. The people with their happy little lives. I am a prisoner in my own thoughts while they walk free. I try to stand, to go and join them, the happy ones. But the noise is too much. As I lifted my head from my pillow, the noise hunched down, growling, snarling, eyes red, glistening white teeth, ready to bear down once again. So I remained in my bed, shackled by the restraints of the noise. This creature, this curse. I watched my neighbor every day, his smile. No matter what time of day, he is happy, smiling, radiating sunshine and rainbows, going to work, a smile, coming home, a smile, getting the mail, a smile. While he smiled, I screamed. I tried to kill myself. To end it all, I pressed a knife to my throat, a small red bead trickling down the serrated steel and onto my trembling hand. The noise wouldn't let me. It flared, roared, shrieking through my brain. shaking the walls of my room. It dropped me to my knees. I clutched my head and dug at my ears, trying to rid myself of the horrible sound. Only after I collapsed to the floor did the noise recede. As I lay there, it released. I have no escape, no exit. My life is pointless, miserable, but it won't fucking end. I watched my neighbor, his smile. He had no demons. His life was perfect, untainted, not like mine. All I had was pain. The snarling creature devouring my mind. He had no pain. He had a happy life, that bastard. He didn't deserve it. I did. He couldn't appreciate the silence like I could. I knew pain. I knew the screeching, tearing torrential storm that eats away at sanity, at hope, at soul. That asshole didn't. I deserved that life, but the noise took it from me. My neighbor, that ignorant ass. I watched him out my window, going about his day, smiling, mocking me, mocking my suffering. And no more. I climbed out of bed, ignoring the snarling creature that had come to define me. I grabbed the lamp from my bedside table and stepped out the front door of my house into the rising sun. The creature in my head screamed, but I didn't care. That fucking smile. My neighbor needed to be taught a lesson. You shouldn't mock people. Not people in pain. I needed to wipe that fucking smirk off his face. I walked up behind him as he went to unlock his car door. He turned around, instantly losing his smile and dropping his keys as he saw me. That bastard. It's not so fun to mock people when you know you've been caught, is it? I lifted the lamp over my head, rage building inside me, matching the roaring sound of the creature in my head. The first time the lamp hit his face, I missed that fucking smile. Instead, I hit his nose, shattering it and sending streams of blood from his face. The second time, I connected with his stupid fucking mouth. A geyser of white and red exploded, his smile destroyed. My third swing hit his eye, eliciting a loud crack as the socket broke. Now he couldn't look at me, smile at me, mock me. As each blow landed, the noise that had overwhelmed me for so long died down, replaced by the wet, smacking sounds my neighbor disappearing. As he experienced my pain, I was released. I dropped the lamp and grabbed him by his stupid, happy little neck and squeezed as hard as I could. I wanted someone to understand how I felt, to be a prisoner with no hope of escaping. I squeezed and squeezed until my arms fell limp. Then silence. My pain was gone. For the first time in God knows how long, the world was calm. For a few short hours I was free. It wasn't enough. Even seeing him pay, seeing his stupid smile disappear as he experienced my pain, it wasn't enough. The noise is back, screaming from the dark, tearing at my small moment of happiness, my curse. But it's okay. I promise. I know how to control it. I'm sorry, but It really is the only way. I have to share my pain.